there are about 400 million cats on Earth. Half of them are house cats, and the rest live on the streets. According to statistics, there are over 200,000 stray cats in Moscow. It is the most cautious and resourceful individuals who can survive in the big cities. This is a distinctive caste of cats. They are born in the street and trust only their self-preservation instinct. It is these cats who consider themselves masters of the big city.
This is not the first generation of animals that live in the streets. They have a fairly high degree of adaptation, and perhaps you have seen how well cats find their way in a traffic flow. So while the cars are moving, they stand and wait patiently until the traffic lights become green and walk across the road along with people. They live in their own world. It's very easy to find food in the city, and it's very easy to find shelter to hide from cold and rain.
We don't even guess it, but city streets, parks, and courtyards have long belonged to stray cats. The metropolis is divided by predators into hunting grounds. Each male controls a small area where he lives and hunts, and the more aggressive the cat is, the bigger the territory and the more subordinates he has.
Cats are not like the animals that live in packs with a rigid hierarchy, like wolves, for example, or any other animal. Nevertheless, they can coexist when following certain rules. There are always some animals who play the role of chiefs, if I may say so, yes, and there are subordinates. And there's someone who's in between. But in any case, I'll go as far as to say that the strongest, the healthiest, and the most experienced cat is the one that will survive.
If you hear such a wailing cat howl, you're most likely witnessing a territorial fight. But why should cats expand the boundaries of their influence? Here, weaker rivals try to move as far as possible from the fight field. But be sure, the female, who these cats risk their lives for, will stay close. Female cats are the main reason why alpha males have these night fights.
When the time comes for love, many cats give in to nature, and that's when we often hear these far from pleasant trills. And at the same moment, you can throw anything at the cat, you can try to pour water onto it, or somehow mute it. The cat will be unaffected and will continue anyway, if you can say so, to give a concert, because in its opinion, the means justify the end.
Zoo psychologists note that it is only for a female that cats fight so desperately. With any other matter of dispute, animals try to avoid using sharp claws and teeth. They prefer to have a psychological struggle with their rival. But why? The fact is that the slightest scratch can lead to death if some infection gets through the wound. Cats may not realize this, but their instinct tells them when it makes sense to have a real fight and when it is wiser to retreat.
Usually these animals try to avoid any contact straight away, because it knows perfectly well that there is no veterinarian under every bush and nobody will cure them. In nature, as a rule, injuries are associated with losing life, losing a possibility to hunt.
But for stray cats, this is not the main rule of survival in a big city. The main one is to avoid your neighbor, a human. After all, for stray cats by birth, we are strangers, which means that we can be dangerous.
If the animal has been frightened, if the animal doesn't have a positive experience of communicating with a human, if for the animal the human is an unidentified object, then it will not go into contact with him because, in the life of such animals, people are not part of their worldview.
It's next to impossible to meet such cats in daylight in a crowded place. You won't see them at garbage bins or cellars of apartment houses. They won't eat the food left by a human. Living next to us, these cats have preserved their independence. In the city, they behave as if they live in the steppe or in the forest, where they need to hunt, and at every step of the way, the same hungry predators lie in wait for them. But does this mean that stray cats are hostile to humans? And can you teach semi-wild cats to trust people?
I wouldn't describe it using the word trust, no. I would say that as long as people don't interfere with them, and if people offer them some interaction, they may agree to give it a try or may do everything possible to avoid it. That's why there are animals that come up to you at bus stops, yes, come up to people and rub against them. And there are animals that come up to you, sit next to you, and just watch. And there are animals that will never do so and will never appear in the field of humans' vision while we are on their territory.
British zoologists studying the behavior of wild and domestic cats found that distrust to people is characteristic of most members of the feline family. Over the years, they haven't developed a sense of attachment to humans, unlike dogs, for example. It's amazing that we were able to tame these animals at all. This is what the ancient ancestor of all modern cats looks like. According to American geneticists, about 10,000 years ago, at least 5 females of this subspecies were taken from the wild to houses, and it was them who became the mother of all modern cats.
People tried to breed the most playful cats, those that remained behaving like a kitten. They tried not to breed, of course, those who showed any aggression to their owners for any reason. What I mean is that we cannot say for sure that they did something bad to them. Most likely they were simply thrown out. Unfortunately, back then it was not much of a city environment. There were forests, there were fields, and it was much easier for a cat to survive.
The history of domestication of wild cats began in ancient Egypt. When a man began to grow and store grain, he had to protect his supplies from mice and rats. Then people also paid attention to the wild hunters living near their settlements.
The cat is a hunter by birth. Its hunting is very different. It's not like dog hunting at all. Dogs need to run somewhere, to seek, to chase, yes, to follow the trail. The cat hunts waiting in an ambush. It waits just as long as necessary, after which it makes an incredible effort. If you watch a cat jump in a slow motion, how a cat hunts something, a mouse, doesn't matter what, you can see that it puts in all its strength, which is incredible for such a small creature, sometimes in one single movement.
This kitten is not just playing now, it's mastering hunting skills. In the world of cats, whether or not they catch prey depends on their speed of reaction. People think that cats mostly hunt mice. However, this is not true. They have 3 main types of prey: small rodents, birds, and fish. And for each case, they have a specific hunting tactics.
And these are the movements the kitten is doing with a paw, just like an adult cat will claw a mouse. And here we see some hunting behavior. That's it. The mouse been caught. The kitten's hiding with the mouse. Now we'll try to hunt a bird. Oh, excellent.
The vision of cats is 6 times more acute than humans. They are able to see in infrared and ultraviolet light. Moreover, cats can distinguish up to 25 shades of gray. This peculiar feature of vision can be explained by the coloration of their main prey, mice, whose fur color varies from light gray to dark gray and brownish gray.
It's very important for them to be able to see naturally in the dusk and in almost total darkness. That is when only the stars and the moon shine. It can see in that dimness, which for the human seems to be complete darkness.
The main sensitive organ of cats is the whisker. We're used to calling them whiskers. However, unlike a human mustache, which is a masculine secondary sexual character and has a rather decorative role, the animal's whiskers are important sensitive receptors with a multitude of anatomical and functional features. The vibrissae whiskers stem, its outer part is longer and stiffer than other hair. The root is implanted in a follicle sealed by blood, the so-called sinus, and is surrounded by tens of thousands of nerve endings that catch the slightest vibration movements and transmit information to the brain. Moreover, the brain has a separate area for each whisker.
Cats have a blind zone below their noses. The snout is elongated and they don't see what is here at their mouth at all. Therefore, they cannot pick up anything from the ground with the help of the eyes. They need to feel it with vibrissae. The sensitivity of our palms, it's not even close to the sensitivity of whiskers.
For example, whiskers report a change in the surrounding environment, sensing motions of airflow. That's why it's impossible to come up to a cat unnoticed. Moreover, thanks to the mechanoreceptors, that is, the ends of the sensitive nerves which are located at the base of whiskers, cats are able to determine the distance to an object and to evade obstacles right in time, even in total darkness.
To squeeze through in order to get somewhere, the cat must feel if there's a hole there big enough for it to go through. By the way, this is exactly how a cat determines whether the hole is big enough, using the vibrissae, which is why they almost never get stuck anywhere. Where the cat's head passes, its whole body will pass. It understands this with the help of whiskers, which it, in fact, has on the whole face and on the front paws here along the side.
Some scientists believe that ancestors of modern cats got whiskers as a kind of detectors, even earlier than hair. Whiskers are thicker than normal hairs on the body of animals, and there are individual muscles responsible for their movements. In the mother's womb, kittens first get whiskers formed, and only after that, hair. And later on, it is whiskers that allow cats to maintain the reputation of excellent hunters. However, the hunting instinct of cats has not always benefited humans. Every year, 25 billion birds, mice, voles, and other small rodents are killed with cat's paws. This figure is cited by Western biologists in their studies. And it's not only stray cats who are responsible for this mass extermination. Domestic cats hold their paws to it as well.
They just frighten with their dreadful fury, completely ruthless fury. There are many recorded cases when cats drove away bears, for example, not being afraid of them at all. And there are cases of cats attacking wolves and very big dogs, and cases when cats really won in such, let's say, fights.
According to statistics, more than 30 cats find themselves in the streets of Moscow every day. Some get lost, some are thrown out by owners. These stray cats, Bellis and Olivers, have one thing in common. Once, they lived a full life at a home. However, now they'll have to adjust to survive in the concrete jungle. Zoo psychologists note the behavior of lost animals is very different from the habits of their congeners born in the streets. They aren't so cunning, fast, and in a big city, they don't feel like masters, more like victims.
If the cat was brought up in the house, then after hitting the street, I'm not going to say the word is lost, no, because it's not always possible to lose it, but it often doesn't know how to use, she doesn't always understand some of the gestures and actions that others offer it. Well, other fellows in misfortune, yes, if you can say so.
To survive, these cats try to stay together, closer to food and shelter. Living in different yards, animals consider each other members of one colony. Usually, the number of animals ranges from 3 or 4 to 20 cats. Domestic cats are unlikely to survive hunting, so they've found their way to adapt to life in the streets. They've settled next to the ones who they've lived with most of their lives, humans, in the hope that they will feed them. And they are absolutely right. At the basement of multi-storied houses, in the markets, and at construction sites where these cats live, there are always those who will feel sorry for them and feed stray animals.
In the city, they live in the number and in the places where they can be fed by people. Accordingly, if the conditions are favorable, for example, if someone feeds them or there is a source of food, then of course there will be a livestock of animals, much bigger than in conditions where the entrances are blocked, for example, or they have nowhere to hide.
The most difficult thing for lost cats is to survive in the streets for the first 2 weeks. During this period, animals try to hide from people and their congeners, but they leave their shelters very rarely, only to find some food. But as soon as the cat has got used to the new environmental conditions, it will start looking for an opportunity to return to its owner.
The question is whether they will survive these 14 days in the streets, because many of our animals that have lived in an apartment, they have their claws removed, they have caps on their claws, and they have collars with bells. They become very easy prey and target. A lot of cats who, for example, live in families with dogs, they therefore are not afraid of dogs because they haven't had such an experience that the dogs offended them. They can go out and face a pack of dogs, just get run over by a car because for them, well, this is an incomprehensible story.
Most pets left without an owner are unable to survive in an aggressive urban environment. However, some cats amaze us with their wit and ability to adapt. They seem to store, in the depths of their consciousness, the whole experience of their ancestors, quickly turning from sweet kitties into wild predators. There are many stories when domestic cats left in summer houses or forgotten in other cities return to their owners. How, when they are hundreds or sometimes thousands of kilometers away, do the animals find their way home? To answer this question, zoo psychologists have an unusual experiment. The animals were closed in boxes, deprived of the opportunity to navigate, and were driven around the city for several hours. After that, they were released in a completely unfamiliar place. Surprisingly, 99% of the cats had no problem to find the right direction. Scientists explain this by the fact that cats, like birds, navigate by the geomagnetic field of the Earth, literally feeling in which direction to move. During World War I, cats were kept in trenches so that they could warn of a gas attack in advance. And during World War II, they were taken aboard submarines as live detectors of air composition.
There are many well-known cases when cats, for example, saved whole families in the war, signaling people to go out of houses, of buildings before bombing. And this is known because animals easily connect the presence of some distant sound and the consequences. Imagine it can hear, and we cannot, the sound that the airplanes make at a great distance, because this is a certain fluctuation of air, and these are certain sounds that may not be available to our ears.
However, today not all cats have qualities that, until recently, have allowed them to survive in the most difficult conditions. And this is all because humans decided to interfere with the nature of these animals, depriving them of their main advantage, independence. Scientists have studied the genome of cats and found out specially bred domestic animals are, at a genetic level, different from congeners living in the wild. Domestic cats were found to have an increased number of so-called genes about domestication, responsible for gentleness and obedience. Here you can find the best representatives of pedigree cats: lop-eared, bald, and even multi-fingered. As a result of breeding by humans, every year there are several new breeds in the world. Millions of years of evolution haven't changed the cat so much as we have in just a few decades.
This could affect the temperament and the degree, the level of sociability. There are cats that are actually chatterboxes. They walk and they meow, meow, meow after a man. They demand, they impose themselves. The man would be glad to communicate with them, but he's talking on the phone, for example, or cooking, and it will rub, purr in my ear all the time, murmur. Well, there are cats that are phlegmatic. They sleep. There are cats that are soft and bend everywhere. Well, it's homemade, yes, with the help of a human.
Most of these cats have never hunted, and they observe the street life only through the grid of their pet carrier. These animals are 100% bred for living with man, and alone they would die.
The problem is that people don't understand cats anymore. We've locked them in apartments. For them, it's absolutely not a normal state to live in such a closed space. In an apartment where people constantly move, where there are household items in a very small space, the cat most often doesn't feel safe for one simple reason. People have forgotten that cats live in a three-dimensional world and not in a two-dimensional world. They need to have heights. If the cat does not have a place where it can sit somewhere high safely, if from there it cannot watch what's happening, if it doesn't have quiet, secluded corners, dark, where the hand will not go, for example, there, yes, in a wardrobe, somewhere in the clothes where the cat can hide, the cat doesn't feel very comfortable.
It turns out that having domesticated cats, have humans eventually made them vulnerable? Perhaps that's why wild animals value their freedom and independence.
In the winter of 2014, the stray cat Mashka, who lives in one of the entrance halls in Obninsk, became a star of all Russian television channels. It saved a 2-month-old baby. For several hours, the cat kept the child warm with her body while she was lying on her in the box. Then she began to meow loudly. The neighbors who came to the hall found the baby and called the doctors. The child was rescued, and the cat Mashka became a local star. It looks like everybody dreams of becoming its owner. However, the stray cat Mashka keeps living in the entrance hall, preferring to be free. It turns out that not every cat needs an owner.
If the animal comes to the house from the street as a small kitten or a youngster kitten, the chances for its adaptation are much higher than for an adult animal that have their own characters, their habits, which may well be due to the state of health, yes, or just found themselves in an apartment.
For most stray animals, the city is their home. Therefore, taking up a cat for re-education, it is necessary to remember that it was born in the streets and at any time it may want to return.
It's very often that the animal is taken, vaccinated, castrated, it's staying at home, and then people leave for the country house in the summer, and even not being released, the animal still goes to freedom.
Zoo psychologists argue the owner is not able to influence the decision of the cat to go and live in the streets. Even if a human takes the animal back, it will find a way to escape again.
The cat, if you remember how it should live, has a huge territory. There it knows everything. It constantly explores this territory, constantly moves. It has secluded places where it can sleep, where no one will touch it. And there are places where it will definitely catch prey. Yes, there it will snap it. And there are places where it simply, for example, rests, washes there, drinks water, and all these places should be safe for the cat.
And only in a situation when a stray cat is on the verge between life and death is it ready to give up its independence. This is Anfisa. She was born and grew up in the streets. There, she probably would have died if it were not for an accidental encounter with a human whose feet the cat literally threw herself under.
We got it somewhere about 6 years ago. Our general producer brought it. Found it on a cold November evening. He brought it in the office in his coat. He was pregnant.
Natalia is an employee in an office and part-time nurse of cats. She shares responsibilities of caring for office cats with her colleagues and is very happy with this neighborhood.
I was delighted when I sort of realized that they have cats living in the office, that they're among us, and that they are coming, so you can take it up, stroke it, something like some sort of a cat therapy, you know.
Pet therapy or zoo therapy. This concept entered our life after scientists found out animals are able to affect the human body, improving not only the psychological but the physical state as well. Modern computer equipment, a plastic box, a cat with super sensitive sensors, and a person stroking it. That's how scientists around the world are studying the purring of cats. There is a theory that purring is soothing for the human nervous system, especially children.
For many children who have problems with the motor system, or some problems with mental development, or some problems with communication skills, that is. For example, some degree of autism, then the communication with animals often relaxes them. Relaxes, makes it possible to feel more at ease, and often, by the way, can even restore some movements, because the animal, it is very soft and warm, mobile, it pushes, it allows you to touch it.
Even in a metropolis, living among people, cats have managed to maintain their independence. Like thousands of years ago, they divide the territory, hunt, grow up, raise offspring, and still do not particularly need a human. People will have to accept it. We will never turn cats into loyal servants as we did with dogs. But perhaps that is why they are so interesting to us and precious.